Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Jai Go Premanandi, Hari Hari.
Hey, Bol.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. So beautiful, Kirtan. We wish continue this for another 30 minutes. It was so wonderful. Because usually these days, virtually, having all the instruments and everything available for a Kirtan, it's very hard. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Kirtaniyas are in my keyboard.
Appreciate it. So once again, thank you so much for giving us your time today and to engage us in Krishna service and Prabhupada service. Before we get started, people who are on Zoom, We will be also sharing this recording on Orlando page probably tonight or tomorrow.
Okay.
To give a couple of few lines about Prabhu. The kirtan, he introduced himself with a wonderful kirtan. So whatever I say is very less. But just to educate people about who Prabhu is, if you don't know. Mahatma Prabhu was born in Los Angeles.
Can I tell you who I am?
Sure.
I was thinking about a book I'm writing.
Okay, Prabhu.
And I have this name, Mahatma, Das, which means servant of the great soul. So I was, it's a book about Prabhupada, and I thought the subtitle would be How an Ordinary Soul Became the Servant of a Great Soul. And then if you find any greatness in me, it's because I became the servant of the great soul. But just a brief history. I can tell a better history than what's written there because
yes, Prabhuji, please go ahead.
That was like official, but
please.
I became a devotee as a student, and that was in 1969, and then I was initiated in 1970 first, and later on in 70 second initiation, and then. Right after my second initiation, I became a temple president. So I was just turned 20 and only a devotee 8 months. And subsequently, I did a lot of Sankirtan and was president 2 other times, actually 3 other times. And I've done most of the services that I was not qualified to do, but that was just what we did, what we were asked. And over the years, my heart was always into teaching, and so then I started developing workshops. I discovered that workshops were one of the best ways to inculcate knowledge more than just, a little class here and there. So I developed lots of workshops, and now we're putting those workshops online. So we've developed 2 platforms, one for devotees and one for non-devotees. And the devotee platform is called Bhakti Support, bhaktisupport.org. And we have now 4 or 5 online courses, 2 in the pipeline. One of them, which you'll be happy to note, is a japa online course with about 20, 25 videos and exercises and, something to use along with your japa. So that's basically what I've been doing, but I never felt qualified to do anything. I felt quite qualified to do nothing, basically. But Prabhupada asked us to do so much, so we did it. And I know that Prabhupada, whatever qualification I had, he gave it to me, and I know he's willing to give that qualification to all of us. So I think that maybe relates a little bit to the topic today. So I think so right now, that's been my main service: teaching, writing, books, articles, online courses, and counseling, coaching, and trying to initiate projects where I think there's a need in ISKCON, where there's some lack, and where devotees need help. So we've initiated a project for men struggling with sexual problems, and created a support group for that. I think the next there's a few projects we need. I think the next one we need is counseling, to create a counseling project for devotees to get help with issues, emotional, psychological issues. So this is I'm kind of going in directions where I see a lack, where there's less of a need, and my classes reflect that. So that's my story. And today I wanted to ask a question. What was the title? Was like Prabhupada consciousness, being more conscious of Prabhupada? Was that the title? Is that the topic that you decided on?
The exact name is Increasing Prabhupada Consciousness.
Yeah. And so when I looked at the title, I was thinking, maybe I would like to ask you a question first. And maybe this would be the best way to address this class by dealing with your answers. What do you think? And you can you don't have to be right. I'm not looking for a right answer. I'm just looking for either personally how you feel or what you've observed. When we're talking about increasing Prabhupada consciousness, what do you think is getting in the way of increasing Prabhupada consciousness? And or do you see anything going on in your life, in the lives of other devotees, in the lives of ISKCON, that could be decreasing Prabhupada consciousness. Like we do something and somehow or other it seems like Prabhupada's consciousness is not central to that. So I thought that might be an interesting way of addressing this point. If you feel, well, in my life or the life of our temple or the life of ISKCON or the life of other devotees I see this mentality or this action or this way of looking at things is decreasing Prabhupada consciousness. Like you might say, well, I observe that maybe devotees, not everyone's reading Prabhupada's books. Well, that would obviously decrease Prabhupada consciousness. Or maybe they're not taking certain instructions to heart, or they're putting too much emphasis on something other than Prabhupada. So rather than me come up with them, I would rather you first come up with some, if you can. If you can't, then I can also throw into the list. But I'd be interested in your experience. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, so maybe I'm putting you on the spot. But, or maybe you have thought about it. Maybe it's on your mind a lot. So, any ideas? You can speak it or chat it.
If anybody want to speak, please unmute yourself. Most of you guys are muted.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
So one of the challenges that comes to mind is our ego, just the refusal to accept a higher authority. So
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yes. And I could add to that the refusal to accept things that Prabhupada might say occasionally that are out of your comfort zone or out of your, I'll just say out of your comfort zone. Philosophically comfortable, culturally comfortable, morally comfortable, and so forth. I think along with that, one of the obstacles could also be, although this wasn't what you were indicating, but also one of the obstacles, well, it could be along with what you're saying, is the thinking that he's from a different culture and a different time in history and things have changed so much so that perhaps the current gurus and teachers are more relevant. That could be a thought also. We need relevance. The world has changed. And we need people to interpret Prabhupada for the modern world, which doesn't mean we have to put Prabhupada in the background or the sideline, but it could happen. So this problem that you bring up was also a problem for us when Prabhupada was present, because he would occasionally say something that was just, okay, where do I put that in my head? I don't have a box for it. We need boxes in our head, isn't it? And when there's no box for it, what do? You don't know how to process it. So occasionally Prabhupada would make statements like that we didn't have a box for, and he would test our faith, for sure. We printed the Chaitanya Charitamritas, and then in order to afford to print them, we had to go out and distribute them. So just whatever volume was being printed, it would go to the temple. So, you'd get the first Antya 1, Adi 1, 2, 3, then Madhya, and then, then all of a sudden you're distributing Antya 3, or how many they printed. I think they had Antya 3 in those days. And it didn't make any sense to us. And Prabhupada said, and they asked Prabhupada, are we supposed to distribute these books to non-devotees? They seem like they're just for us. He said, yes, they will get Lord Chaitanya's mercy by taking the book. So that was a little bit like, okay, this doesn't seem like our experience on Sankirtan, that they're going to read this book or get anything out of it, or it's going to make sense. And Prabhupada saying, no, they'll get Mahaprabhu's mercy, just give them the books. So we had to learn that, we had to learn to balance our common sense with transcendental common sense. Some things that Prabhupada would say, he would want us to apply common sense to, like he's giving us a general instruction. Now apply it in your situation, whether it's India or America, you'll apply it differently. And other things are, no, this is how it is, and it doesn't make sense to us, and we have to accept that. I also, and there were devotees that did doubt and they had trouble. And there were things that were doubted, but it wasn't a problem because it wasn't a Shastric statement. It was just like Prabhupada's opinion about something, or Prabhupada relaying something that he read or something he studied in school, which may no longer be relevant or entirely true. And so sometimes we knew that. He was just relating something he read. And we'd say, oh, Prabhupada, that's what they used to think, but the theories have changed now. And so that kind of thing was not such a problem, but some other things could be problems. So one of the ways I think a lot of times devotees would ask, Prabhupada said women are less intelligent. What did they think? How did they deal with that? These are American women. The best answer is that he never made them feel less intelligent, and he never made them feel inferior. So when they read it, it didn't register. And when they asked him about it, he said, well, if you think you're a woman, you're less intelligent. He never really, made them feel like, oh, you're an inferior human being. So, and we had so much faith in Prabhupada because he pulled us out of the material world, and nobody could do that. So it also made it a little easier when things were difficult to accept, and say, well, everything else has helped us, so why would we stop here? Why would we doubt here? So it's a discussion in and of itself. When it borders on material knowledge, maybe there is limitation. The guru doesn't know everything. He's not a doctor, not a psychologist. At the same time, he knows a lot of those things sometimes. So it's difficult to be a disciple because, as you said, Kishori Priya, the ego gets in the way. And sometimes people ask me to be a disciple. I say, are you sure you want to have someone that you have to do everything they say? Are you sure that's what you want? And a lot of devotees will say, that's exactly what I want, because I want to stop making decisions for myself, because look at me, I'm still in the material world. Those decisions didn't work. But in reality, when you take that position, sometimes it's extremely difficult to submit. And so that's why pranipatena, that's the qualification. Bow down, mister. That's the first qualification. I was just thinking today, Kishori Priya, about Panchajangri. And the kind of humility he exhibited is really quite rare, because it takes a lot of advancement in spiritual life to have that kind of humility. Like you're not looking for honor. You're never positioning yourself to be recognized. In fact, you don't like to be recognized, but you like to serve, and you're ready to humble yourself practically to anyone. So I was thinking how attractive that is, and how much that changes the heart, and how rare that is to achieve, and how important that is, and how that is really the essence. And I was thinking of other God brothers I have who when I see them and they're interacting with me, I think, I don't understand their humility. It's like way beyond mine. It's so amazingly powerful, amazingly rare, amazingly, it's just like embodies Krishna consciousness. So I think it's important for us to remember that's actually the essence. And, flattening our ego is what everyone's doing out there, right? Everybody's very concerned about what others think about them and how they respect them. And although the caste system, Varnashram turned into caste system, and then we become caste conscious. But that caste consciousness, it's all over the world. It's just, whether it's official or not, it's all over the world. We had apartheid in America. Even after slavery was abolished, segregation was abolished, we still had apartheid. It just wasn't on the law books, but it was in the consciousness. And then it manifests. So we have caste consciousness like anything in America. Or being Indians in America, you must feel somewhat that people, they don't deal with you all the time as like a white American, isn't it? So, the more Indians come over a longer period of time, the less that will be. But that was true for Catholics. It was true for Jews. When they first came, every, minority comes. What to speak if they think you're a Muslim, then that's like even worse. So, the humility of a Vaishnava, where there's no discrimination, no prejudice, there's respect for everyone. Wow. That's it. That's what we want. What to speak of respect and surrender to our Guru. So, I want to take this question also further, that Prabhupada, some people may think, well, maybe he's outdated in some ways. The culture that he grew up in is much different than the culture that we're growing up in. And our tradition is a tradition of bhasya. There's always commentaries being written because society changes. I think one reason bhasya is needed, not only because of cultural changes, it seems to me people's intelligence, they're less able to understand the original author. So then there's commentaries. And even sometimes the authors make commentaries on their own books to make sure everyone understands. And so, of course, Prabhupada said, you can't understand Bhaktisiddhanta, you will understand him through me. He was telling us that as young devotees. And sometimes people do not understand Prabhupada well, and we need to write to explain it so that they can eventually understand. So that's not a fault, it's just a reality. But it doesn't mean that when they're purified, they won't understand. Maybe initially. As Indians, you have an easier time. You already kind of understand the philosophy. But as Americans, a lot of times they'll open the book and it's just they don't understand. So we need to explain it. And it's just a reality. That's traditional. Disciples are always explaining and translating. Like, what does it mean women are less intelligent? A modern woman, that's seen as offensive to her. And we have to explain, no, he's saying that so that you'll be protected, that you won't be misled by men who want to exploit you, that you think love you. And so when we explain it in the context, then I think, okay, then it makes more sense. So yeah, what we're seeing now is because the culture Prabhupada comes from understood so much of this, it didn't need to be explained. People just, you live in that culture, so you understand what it means. Girls getting married at 12, 13, that's like, you can't do that in the world today. That's, what do they call that? Slavery or child marriage, but it's like slavery kind of, They have so many politically incorrect names for that. But when you understand it in the context of the culture which it came from and how it worked then it's like, okay, it doesn't work today. Prabhupada didn't enforce it. But he talks about it in his books. So although he didn't say to do it, but he talks about it in his books. So then people read the books. We need to explain it. So that's okay. And that's our service to Prabhupada. So we're not keeping him out of the center by explaining him, but we're making him accessible to people. Did you want to say something else, Kishori, Priya, about that? Any nuances or specific ways in which you think that the ego gets in the way?
I think it's basically, I was thinking the same as what you said, that it's very difficult to be submissive in today's world. Just because we live a parallel life, our material life, where we have to showcase our intellect, and now we are on the other side where we have to suppress our intellect, and that actually is a conflicting, and this is a struggle that devotees.
Yeah. I wouldn't say. I think the problem is it's like, let's say you're very wealthy, right? So you don't go around with gold chains, showing everybody off and drive a Rolls Royce or something. But you are wealthy and you can't deny that. It's just a fact, right? But you don't go around showcasing it and you don't feel that you're better because you are. So I think that's where humility is the great neutralizer. That I may have graduated from Harvard, as the top student in my class, but does that make me a better human being or a better devotee? No. It just objectively it means I was the best in the class. Now, how we process that, that's where the trouble comes, right? So, okay, so let's say I wasn't, I never went to Harvard. And even if I did, I doubt that I would be the best in the class. But let's say I were. And the way I would process that is Krishna in this life has given me the intelligence to be able to do that and or the determination to be able to do that. And it's not mine. And if I think it's mine, at that point I become proud. That's that conjunction. Okay, here's the talent, but here's the identification. I don't identify it. It's all going this, it's his. And now can I use that? So I write a book, becomes a bestseller, whatever. And do I change? Am I now mistreating people because I'm famous and even more wealthy? Sold 1 million, so there's another $1 million or $2 in the bank, 1 or 2 million in the bank now. So, now I can live in the best neighborhood in my city in one of the best homes. No problem. Do I feel better? You might. Most people would. But are you actually better? No. You're the same. So if you're a devotee, that doesn't affect you. So it's a balance of being able to acknowledge, yes, I did sell 1 million, but I don't. And yes, I was gifted with some intelligence that enabled me to be the best in my class at Harvard, but it doesn't mean that I'm better. That's the hard point. There was a Christian, I think it was a Christian who wrote a book on humility, and he said, the people with the best qualities have the hardest time being humble. Because objectively, they are better. I was talking to the devotees the other day, and I was saying, is it better to eat meat or not eat meat? So I would say, of course, it's better not to. Does it make you a better person if you don't than everyone else if you don't eat meat? In one sense, yes, but in another sense, not that I'm better. It's just I'm doing better. I'm doing something which is better. Does that make me better? So the devotee, he doesn't take I'm doing something better to his ego that I am better. But what I'm doing is better. Yeah, objectively we can say that's better not to eat meat, and I'm not eating it, so I'm acting in a better way. Does that make me better? But the ego, the humility of a devotee is no. I respect everyone, or the Mahabhagavad. No, everyone's better. So that's where we have to go with that. So, let's say you're more intelligent than another person, but what do you do with that? How do you carry that around? Do you exploit them? Do you let them know? I got better grades than you. I come from a better university, so you can't tell me what to do. You don't do that. That's where we get in trouble, right? And I think one of the greatest qualities of anyone, devotee or not devotee, is not humility in and of itself, but that they have all the reasons not to be humble, and they are. Because a lot of us have all the reasons to be humble because we're not really that good at anything. And we don't have much to show. So, like when I became a devotee, it was so easy. I was just a university student, so I had, it took me like a day to sell everything that I had, which was like, 20 albums. And that's basically it. And everything else, I just packed on my back and moved into the temple. I wasn't anybody famous. I had potential to do so many things. And because I was in a good university. But at that point, it was only potential, nothing. So it was easy. And you're someone like George Harrison. He asked Prabhupada, should I move in the temple? Now that's huge. And he's giving up a lot. That's a lot of humility, isn't it? It's easy to be humble when you've got nothing to be proud of. But when you have everything to be proud of and then you're humble, to me, that's like the gold medal of humility. And generally, you see the highest degree of humility in the people who have the greatest qualities, who have the greatest reason. to be humble. I was with Radhanath Swami at the Eco Village. We had a tour there, and my wife was there, and he just happened to be visiting there, and we asked if he could speak to our tour group. And my wife was introducing him and saying he's doing so much, he's doing this and doing that. And he just laughed. He said, "What am I doing? I'm not doing anything." And he actually felt that his disciples were doing it all. And of course, he was the inspiration, he was the intelligence. So many things would have never happened without him. But his actual experience of that, because of humility, was, I'm actually not doing it. They're doing it. So that's what's so beautiful about humility. The people who have the right to be proud are the most humble, if they're the most advanced.
Okay. And it is a sign of advancement too. The more in our neophyte condition, we're just proud of nothing. Yeah. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes begging for please bless me with love, right? So he's the embodiment of love, and he is asking for mercy from others. So.
Well, you're exactly right. The ego is dying to be recognized. So whatever can grab onto to be recognized for it will grab on. That's why Prabhupada said a pauper is proud of his penny. Because what's a penny? It's nothing, but it's something. Like, look, I have a penny. So it's very childlike. Children are like that, they do something. Look what I did, they need recognition just to feel good about themselves. But the ego is kind of relentless in its effort to get recognition and honor. And that's why when someone doesn't want it, that's a huge sign of spiritual advancement. Whether they deserve it or not is not even so much the question, but generally they deserve to be honored. But still, they don't look for it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, when he would meet his disciples, they would pay dandavats, and he would say, "Dasosmi, I am your servant." He was asked, "How many disciples do you have?" He said, 4, 2 hands and 2 legs. And he said, "My hands and legs will do whatever I ask. They're servants. But I have no disciples because I'm servant. I'm servant of my disciples, so I don't see them as my disciples, like my servants." And really, that's the only way we can be leaders. We can't have a mentality that in any way I own or possess or control anybody, but I'm only the servant. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, the problem is when you get recognition, when you get position, when you get power, it's hard to remain in that mood that I'm servant, because now you think, well, I'm great. Look at what's going on by my Shakti, by my power. So much is happening. But he said for a pure devotee, there's nothing in this world that can shake him from his realization or his reality that I'm a servant of Krishna. Nothing shakes that. 1 million followers praising him, millions of dollars thrown at his feet, every facility in the world, and he's always thinking, but I'm just a humble servant. So that's a really beautiful thought to meditate on, because for us, it's not like that. Little things can shake our ego, right? Wow, look what I did. I'm so good. And then it gets worse when you're looking for recognition. What if you don't get it? You get frustrated. Why didn't you, Shori Pri, why didn't you tell me this was such a great kirtan, But so why am I doing the kirtan? To get your praise? Is that why I did it? Then we just mess up the whole thing. And as you know, the material world just operates that way. So everyone operates that way, so that's just normal. So it doesn't really disrupt anything, because that's just, go on American Idol. Why do you go on American Idol or what, any of those shows? Because you want to show your stuff. You want to make it, right? Amongst other things. But that's a big factor in it. And that's exactly not where a devotee is at all. He's not into showing off. So that's really important for us, especially if you're going to be a leader. Because as I was saying, in the material world, it kind of like, as long as you keep it contained, Donald Trump went a little over the top. So a lot of people didn't like that. He was like too straightforward and, a little too much about himself. But if he just toned it down a little bit, then people probably would have been okay, right? Because we're used to that. That's kind of normal. But when you bring that into devotional service, it's not normal. It's a contamination. It really messes things up much more than it does in the material world. So we have to be careful. And because we have to be examples. So if we become proud, it's a bad example. It's almost like an example that Krishna consciousness doesn't work. Isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, by Prabhupada's mercy, we can do it. Don't give up. And measure your advancement in this way, by your humility, your respect for others, your disinterest in criticizing others, all these things. Yes. So does anyone else have another way that you think Prabhupada consciousness in some way is being minimized or sidelined? Sounds like Ritra Nath. Can we? Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, glories to the Prabhupada. Thank you so much for coming over to speak. I have one question. So, the reason why this topic came up in my mind was that, so we see, like, I don't want to criticize, like, I myself am not on the right side completely, but we see that there is a lot of regard devotees have for Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, all glories to Prabhupada.
Yes.
Prabhupada is Prabhupada was so nice. But then the problem comes, and Mother just touched upon that a little bit. The problem comes when it comes down to doing what Prabhupada wanted or would have wanted. And that is coming from our authorities, GBC, temple president, other managers. Why does that become such a big challenge? Prabhupada was so nice. Prabhupada did this. We owe our life to Prabhupada. But is it that we are not able to see our authorities as being representatives of this divine grace?
Mm-hmm.
So how can we resolve that dichotomy? How can we address this problem?
So the question is,
feel as you have felt for Prabhupada? Yeah.
You're saying,
I don't know if I articulated it properly.
Are you saying the chain of authority coming down from Prabhupada through GBC temple president, how can we see that as Prabhupada's instruction, Prabhupada's will? Is that the question?
I guess, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Before I answer that from your perspective, I want to answer it from the leadership perspective, that if you are a leader or you ever become a leader, you can make it easier for people to follow you by being an example of Prabhupada's teaching and being personal and kind and respectful and affectionate. And, well, maybe this partially answers the question. If we don't represent Prabhupada well, or we perhaps maybe we have really bad sadhana, or maybe we're preaching something that's kind of like, well, I don't know if that's actually true, or we're not as kind or compassionate as we really need to be as a leader, that's going to make it difficult for devotees to see you as a representative of Prabhupada, because they need to see that. So if you're ever in that position, just try to understand that's extremely important, because the more you represent Prabhupada in your life, in your teaching, the easier it is for people, and the more natural it is for people to follow you. So sometimes, if a leader is weak in some area of his bhakti, people start doubting him. And then if they doubt him, even if he's teaching what Prabhupada's teaching, they may doubt that he actually understands it. Or it's hard for them to follow because he's not following it. But to go to your question just as without that discussion. That's for you when you become a leader. And that's also just for all of us to understand. If a devotee is having difficulty following an authority, it doesn't always mean they lack faith in Prabhupada. They may lack faith in that authority, either for a good reason or a bad reason. But I'm just addressing, we don't want to give them good reasons to, if we're authorities, we don't want to give anybody a good reason to doubt us, or a good reason to find it difficult to serve under us. So now, the way Prabhupada structured ISKCON was that it was a little bit like military command, that in order for things to be organized, there had to be some kind of chain of command. And when a devotee had trouble with the leader, it could be discussed with the leader, it could be discussed with the GBC, sometimes discussed with Prabhupada. But while it was being discussed, he wanted us to cooperate. He wanted us to keep everything intact, chain of command intact, to create stability. So Prabhupada was aware that some leaders maybe weren't qualified, or as qualified as he would have liked them to be, and that it was difficult sometimes, not because of the devotee, but because of the disqualification of the leader, that it made it difficult for the devotees to follow. So in that interim period where they're trying to work it out, he still insisted, well, this is how it goes. This is what we have to follow. This is, the GBC said this. Maybe I disagree with it. Okay, you can disagree. You can take that up with them, write a letter to the ECs. I don't think this resolution is correct for these reasons. But while the resolution is in place, then we have to follow that. While this person is the temple president, then we have to follow him. Or you have to find another temple or another temple president that you can work with. That's the way Prabhupada wanted it. Now, having said that, there are unique situations, one of which came up in one of our temples where the temple president, he may have been GBC also, was breaking principles while living in the temple. He and his wife were breaking principles. Meat eating. She was actually eating meat. I wasn't there. I don't know the details. And obviously, huge problem. And a lot of devotees left, and a lot of devotees stayed. And, if you stayed, you would think, don't leave. All you are leaving, the temple's going to fall apart. And if you left, they think, don't stay. You're supporting what they're doing. And so they asked Prabhupada, and he said both were right, because you had to stay to maintain the temple, but you should have opposed it. So he wasn't against opposition if something was wrong. But he mentioned that still the people who stayed and maintained it, they did a good job. So a lot of times we have to go through situations we're not happy with, or maybe objectively they're wrong, and everybody knows it. But in a particular time and circumstance, this is the president, this is the GBC, this is who we work with, and we have to figure out how to work with them. It doesn't mean there's no discussion. It doesn't mean things can't be improved. It doesn't mean that maybe someone else is more qualified to run the temple, and that could be discussed. But everything is done, I think the most important thing that I see, everything is done respectfully, according to etiquette, not just, I was going to say Vaishnava etiquette, but first I said according to etiquette, because sometimes we may not even act properly. What to speak of Vaishnava etiquette, isn't it? You've seen that sometimes. Just the dealings are, they can be very disrespectful. So we, working problems out with proper etiquette, proper Vaishnava etiquette, respect, and that's extremely important, because there are always going to be problems. You may get a new president, he may be great, but then 3 years later, he's got to move, or he gets a new job, and he doesn't have time, and then we need a new president, and then we have to find someone, but maybe it's not the best person, and things aren't going so well, and so this is just natural. We're going to have to work it out. Vaishnava etiquette, that's really important. I don't know if that answers your question, if that's what you were asking.
Yes.
We, let's say you're a member of the GBC, and so they they have a resolution, they vote on it. Now, let's say you voted against it, but the majority voted for it. So you have to follow that, even if you disagree. Now, you could bring it up again at a later time, or propose to amend it, or propose another resolution that might be better than that. But while that resolution's intact, it's like a team agreement, We're playing football. This is, when they all huddle, they're just making a strategy, a plan. You go here, you do this. So you just do it. You can't say, I'm not going to do that. That's a stupid plan. No, you just do it. That's what's agreed upon. The quarterback, he decides this is the way we want to do it. So that's how Prabhupada wanted us to do it. And he really wanted us to be able to navigate the problems between ourselves, but we did a really bad job of it. We often did a bad job of it, but that's what he wanted. So when he said, here's the chain of authority, he didn't mean the authorities were like autocratic. He didn't mean it that way. He meant that all of you together will work things out as necessary in a gentlemanly way, in a Krishna conscious, in a humble way. That's what he was hoping, but we weren't always doing that, unfortunately. So it sounds a bit autocratic. Here's just the chain of command. But it means to be reasonable people who are humble and kind devotees, who will be humble and kind with everyone. Then it works. And if it doesn't, we talk to them and say, this doesn't work on the temple level. You can easily change things. So leaders have to be like that. That's important. Or, Aritra, another time, some leaders couldn't get along, so Prabhupada would say, okay, you go over here in this city and start a temple. Or you go open something in this country, because you could see, sometimes people just need their space. Their leaders, their managers, right? So sometimes Prabhupada didn't even try to get them to get along. He just put them in two different places because he knew that they can't get along. It's not they're leaders, They have to have their own kingdoms. So sometimes that's a solution. You could say it's diplomatic, but sometimes it's just because of people's nature. It's better they have their own sphere. But, as an organization, there's got to be compromises. One thing that we'll see that ISKCON improves over time. So even if something is wrong today and you feel like you can't communicate it, it's usually over time, it will get rectified. At least we can have a little confidence that over time we'll mature, we'll understand more, new people will come in. When the younger generation comes in, they have a little different vision, maybe a better way of dealing with it. At least we could hope for that. They're coming in, I was temple president 8 months. Now temple presidents aren't going to be temple presidents with 8 months in ISKCON. It's going to be more like 10 years or 20 years. Okay. I think one of the key issues in this discussion about Prabhupada's position is that because Prabhupada's not here, and because you haven't met him and everyone joining since after he left never met him, there's often in the minds and hearts of some devotees a problem with relating to Prabhupada as their guru, as their param guru. And I think one thing's important, which we could also state in relation to Panchajangri. Now, Panchajangri has left. And I had this dream that I was in Mayapur and he was there. Like the night he left, I had a dream. I was in Mayapur. And I said, oh, you're back. And we were embracing. He was just smiling. And then I said, then I read when I woke up in the morning, it said that he had left. So like that night that I had the dream that he was there, he left. So I was thinking, well, maybe it means he's living in the Dham always. And, whenever you talk about he left, it's quite depressing. But when you talk about, well, he lives eternally in Mayapur, that's his seva, then it's like, oh, we can feel that. You can see the deities, you think of him. So much influence there. So if we talk about Prabhupada in terms of he left in November of 1977, then there's a lot of lamentation. Oh, I never met him. I could have met him. Or I wish I were older. Or he came, he was in Delhi when I was 7. Why didn't my parents take me there? Or whatever, I was with a devotee in South Africa, and Prabhupada came. I think he was like 13 or something. And, he didn't live that far from where Prabhupada was. And he's like, why didn't I go there? But I was talking about this with some devotees, yesterday, and I was saying that a lot of devotees think, if I could just met Prabhupada, and would have been, I'd be so much better, and you all got to see Prabhupada, and you're so fortunate. And I said, yeah, but you're doing better than most of Prabhupada's disciples. You're actually doing better in Krishna consciousness than most of Prabhupada's disciples. So having met him, how are you doing better? They met him, but where are they in their relationship with him now? So that was, 45 years or whatever, 47 years ago, or how many years ago they met him. So I think it's really important to think like that. Don't talk in terms of he left. Talk in terms of he's alive, and as much alive in your life as you allow him to be, in your heart, as much alive in your heart as you allow him to be, and he will guide you, he will instruct you. And so part of this problem of increasing Prabhupada consciousness can be due to the terminology we use, that Prabhupada left. Because when you say he left, then there's that whole line of thinking, I never met him, I wish I could have seen him, if I just could. I'm such a mess now, but if I just would have met him, then I would be like you Prabhupada disciples. Well, where are like 4,000 or 5,000 of them, or how many, few thousand that maybe aren't doing so well. So you don't want to be like them, right? And yes, if you met him, there's a good chance you'd be doing amazing, but there's a good chance you wouldn't, right? So that line of thinking works against this, but the line of thinking of Prabhupada is present. And he can be present in your life, he can talk to you, he can guide you, he can bless you. What to speak of, he's instructing you in his books, his lectures. And the words are powerful, they're always powerful. And it really depends on how much you take it. And look at Prabhupada's life. So Bhaktisiddhanta left in 1936. So 32 years later, Prabhupada, after 32 years later, and he got the instruction before 1936, but it was reaffirmed later. So let's say, 40 years after he got the instruction to preach. Now he's doing it. And he's saying, I only met him 6 times, but I never felt that I was separate from him. So I think that's super important. And when we all feel that way, then Prabhupada is in the center because he's in our hearts, right? And so naturally, you know what I find really encouraging? Sometimes I'll meet a devotee and we'll be talking, or he'll be giving class. And I think he's a Prabhupada disciple because he said, well, Prabhupada was on his morning walk, he said this, and then Prabhupada did that, in his books he said this. And I'm like, oh, he's a Prabhupada disciple. Then I find out he's not. And it's like, and you talk to them, he said, yeah, I feel like Prabhupada is my most important guru. I feel very close to him. So that's a really good sign. So I think this one little thing, that Prabhupada is still alive, is the best answer to this increasing Prabhupada's consciousness. If we all think like that, and don't use past tense. Prabhupada says, on a morning walk, Prabhupada is saying, Prabhupada is saying us, in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is telling us, and encourage everyone that you have a relationship with Prabhupada. He's present in his service, and you've probably all felt it in the service you do. It's very special. As you help spread ISKCON, help other people, you can feel Prabhupada smiling on you. And spiritual life it's not three-dimensional, so his mercy can come from wherever he is, right? And I just know in my life that I just feel anything I can do to please Prabhupada is it's my success. And if I displease him, It's a disaster for me. That's how I feel. And I think we should all feel this way. And of course, if you have a guru, or you're going to take, or you don't have a guru yet, but you will find a guru, what is your guru doing? He's just representing Prabhupada. And the more you understand Prabhupada, the happier he is. He doesn't have to be the sole interpreter for Prabhupada. Maybe in the beginning it's more important, but as you progress, you get guidance. And I think it's really important for all of you to understand Prabhupada's mission. What did he want? What was his vision? How did he see ISKCON? How did he see the preaching? What were his different views on different things? And not put Prabhupada in a box, because some people try to put him in a box, but he was definitely not a boxed up person. I mean, in some ways, 16 rounds, 4 principles. Okay, yeah, these things we're not going to change. But in other ways, he was very flexible, and to understand that's very important, adjusting according to the situation. He was so good at doing that. And that's really, when you say increasing Prabhupada consciousness, I always think, well, what was his heart? What did he want? And the more you analyze it, the more you understand he wanted everyone to be Krishna conscious. And whatever we could do to help them become Krishna conscious, we should do it. I mean, Bhakti Siddhanta went, quote unquote, over the top to encourage people, to cultivate people. He was willing to do so many things. And Prabhupada was so tolerant. So it's really, really important that we all, as followers of Prabhupada, have that same mood. Very, very important. And if we don't have that mood, we can't say we're really connected to Prabhupada. It's like there's a saying, you become more Catholic than the Pope. More Catholic than the Pope means you're more strict than the Pope. You're more narrow. You're more, I would say in this sense, maybe less understanding, less sympathetic, less compassionate, less accepting. And so you've gone overboard. And so we don't want to do that. And if we represent, how could Prabhupada not be in the center if you all perfectly represent him? You speak of him in the present tense. Your life is edified by his books and teachings. That's that's where you get your energy. Then naturally, you will emanate Prabhupada consciousness automatically without trying, because that's where you live in your own life. So it requires a balance between dedication to our guru and dedication to Prabhupada. But Prabhupada is the foundation, and we're all connecting to him. He's the well, samsara nada. He's the cloud, and so whatever we have, just coming from him. An average soul can become a great soul by serving the great souls. So maybe we should take some questions now, or someone could add to the discussion and what they think, either what you think is getting in the way of increasing Prabhupada consciousness, or a question.
So I was just reflecting on what you just spoke about, understanding Prabhupada's mood.
Maybe one. Just one. That was my wife. So sorry. Okay.
I was reflecting on and kind of thinking about what you were saying on understanding Prabhupada's mood.
Yes.
And I've heard, actually it was His Grace Mahatma Prabhu once say that when we go to a dham, we really need to understand the mood of the Acharya to kind of imbibe the true spirit of the dham. Mm-hmm. So how can we best imbibe that, understand the mood of Srila Prabhupada, for example, when we are sitting in his house in Vrindavan, or when we are in Mayapur? How do we really understand that mood, other than what we've heard from his disciples, or kind of like how do we capture that?
Mm-hmm. I don't think you have to be in Vrindavan to capture it. Capture it more there. Let me answer this question first for me. When I'm in the Dham with Prabhupada, it just strengthens the mood that I already have. It strengthens the understanding I already have. It's obvious, everything's obviously stronger in the Dham. So, I mean, I can explain more about Prabhupada's mood because I think that will help you imbibe it in that environment. Prabhupada was it seemed to us, from our vantage point, that he was 24/7 engaged in quote unquote, saving the world, reaching out to every conditioned soul in any way possible. Through his little conversation with a priest, through his radio program, television, through writing his books, through the lectures, public lectures, Bhagavatam class, morning walks. It's just like he was giving Krishna. But behind that giving Krishna was a vision to encompass the whole world with Krishna consciousness. So the mood, I think the mood, at least the way I see the mood, is how can I do that? Because that's what he wants. How can I contribute to that? And then when I think that way, I think in parallel with that thought, part of the answer, aside from the practical, is I have to be more Krishna conscious, because just the practical is only part of the equation. I can, bring the people in, build the temple. But if I'm not Krishna conscious, what do they get when they come? It's like I built a restaurant, there's nothing to eat. We're just serving water and toast. So this is how I always feel it. I always feel, okay, I know Prabhupada's, he wants to change the world. That's what we have a little temple, a few people come, we have our Sunday feast and so on, and that was definitely a foundational part of the program. But Prabhupada, simultaneously, his vision was, how do we reach the top? How do we convince the leaders and like that? And I think we need to just kind of put that seed in our consciousness. And then when you're in the Holy Dham and you're there, then you allow that to strengthen. Or Prabhupada, give me the ability to do that. Prabhupada, give me the intelligence. I think about this all the time. I think about Varnashram. I think about influencing leaders of the world. And I think, Prabhupada, if you want me to do that, you're going to have to do some magic with me, because from the point we're at now to getting there, I'm not exactly sure what the road is. We can hardly keep our own people, 16 rounds and getting up in the morning, and we want to now take Varnashram, and so I need the intelligence, I need the strength, and so on. So that's how I see it personally. And the more you study, if you keep this in mind, that this is Prabhupada, it's someone who's thinking about how to save the world, then any biography you read, any little morning walk you see, everything, it'll all make sense. You'll say, oh, that's who he is. I can see that. And everything he's saying and doing, I can see inside. He's not thinking of just a little city or a little neighborhood will make Krishna conscious. He's like, how? Because he talks about in his books how kings should be, how government should be. Why is he talking about it? Because that's where he wants it to go. So that's how I personally take it. And when I chant my rounds, a lot of the time when I'm chanting my rounds, I'm feeling Prabhupada. It's actually in my Vyas Puja offering this year. Basically, I said, you gave us an impossible instruction, because to save the world, And so when I chant my rounds, I feel, Prabhupada, I'm so unqualified. Can you give me the qualification? I'm just chanting. It's you want something done. I don't know how to do it. Can you guide me? Can you help me? So that was also Prabhupada's mood when he came to America. I don't know how to do this. guide me, help me. So that's my understanding. That's how I process it personally. And that's, everything Prabhupada did was just like a trap to bring people to Krishna. That's just how he did it. And he was moving so fast. It was like, you may have heard the story of printing 17 books. Well, that was kind of like the icing on the cake, but it was all pretty much like that. It was like, it's just moving. This is how many books we did. We did the largest, I think it was 1972, we did like the largest number of books ever, 72, 73, whenever it was. And Prabhupada got the report, he was so happy, and he said, okay, now next year double it, which was just like a shock to us. Like, it's like you're the first person to run the 4-minute mile. Okay, well now run it in, 3 minutes and 49 seconds. So you can't do that. The body doesn't do that. The Prabhupada was like that. So it was like relentless, just relentless pushing. Distribute books, open temples, defeat the scientists, open India up, programs, pandals, festivals, Rath Yatra. It's just, tirelessly pushing. So we know that's what he wants. And if we have that consciousness, what could be more Prabhupada conscious than that? Save the world. Because that's what he came to do. And you get bonus points. Anything you can do to save a little part or portion of the world, if it's one soul or raise 2 children that go out and make hundreds of people Krishna conscious, and whatever it is, then you're in Prabhupada's heart. You've done something, and then you go back to God and you see him and say, this is what I did. Like when Prabhupada asks you, what did you do? You can say, this is what I did. I ran this temple. I started this project. I did this school. I saved these devotees who had doubts in Krishna consciousness. So many things. That's the way I see it. And, connecting people to Prabhupada. Let me tell you something. This will help you a lot. One of the reasons we were so enthusiastic when Prabhupada was here is because we wanted people, we knew when we were making devotees, they're going to meet Prabhupada. That's who we're connecting them to. So it was like, there's all these gurus out there, and we were thinking, none of these gurus compare. We just get these people, you have Prabhupada. And we knew once they met him, that was it. It was just like whatever doubts they had, if they're teeter-tottering, whether they should be devotees or not, once they met Prabhupada, generally that was enough. So we were so enthusiastic because we had the Jagat Guru, and he had the answer for everything, and he could inspire everyone. So if we can feel that way now, that would be like here, let's say, well, we bring them to other gurus and maybe they're not this or that. Yeah, everybody is what they are, but Prabhupada's still there as the main guru. And if we say, no, really, we're bringing them to Prabhupada, and then the gurus are bringing them to Prabhupada a little closer, right? I have a nice story for you. I think this will inspire you. In 1982, one of the ISKCON gurus was having trouble, and he went to Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj, and Sridhar Maharaj helped him. And ISKCON saw a problem there, that an ISKCON guru has now become attached to a guru, a leader outside of ISKCON. And that's always been like troublesome for ISKCON, organizationally. Because that means, well, so many devotees will go there, and maybe what they hear will not be supportive of what the movement's doing. There was validity to it, but probably lots of overreaction and not the maturity to deal with it. So they told this leader and said, you have to give up your connection with this person. He said, well, he helped me. I was having trouble, and he helped me, and he's my 6-year guru. I said, no, if you're going to stay in ISKCON, you can't do that. And he said, well, if you're going to force me to give up my 6-year guru, then I'm going to leave. And he had disciples. So now he's telling his disciples, I'm leaving, you can come with me. And ISKCON is telling the disciples, you should stay in ISKCON. So lots of them left. I was in charge of one of his temples, and I was in India. When I came back, there were no devotees in the temple. They all had gone with him. Yeah. So I think 80 devotees left England to join him. You imagine, maybe 40 from the manor. You imagine just 40 devotees who lived in the temple or around the temple just left. It was a disaster. So one of our godbrothers was preaching to his disciples that this devotee, he's now, I don't know exactly what he said, but it wasn't using kind words. And he said, you should not go with him. Basically, like he's become a rascal or something like that. And then that guru confronted that devotee and said, I heard you're speaking against me, and you're telling my disciples not to go with me. And he said, yes, that's true. He said, why are you doing that? And he said, because I made these people devotees, and you initiated them, but I didn't make them for you. I made them for Prabhupada. And they're Prabhupada's, and I'm not going to let them go with you because you're leaving ISKCON. And that guru broke down and cried, and he said, you're right, and he hugged him because he realized that that's the truth. These devotees are Prabhupada's. Everyone who's coming to ISKCON, they're Prabhupada's. They're not owned by the guru. And if that guru leaves ISKCON, they're not his property. Yeah, they're ISKCON. Stamped, you are ISKCON property. You are Prabhupada's property. Of course, some disciples will go. You can't stop that. I don't think it's, wise to try to stop them in any kind of aggressive way. It's just what happens is going to happen. But that's the real view. They're Prabhupada disciples, and that's who they were made for, that's who they came for, and that's who they should stay with. So I hope that helps. It's a beautiful story, isn't it?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So, that's how we should all feel. Everyone coming to our temples, ultimately, here's Prabhupada. He's the Jagat Guru. He's the main one. Now, there are other gurus. That's okay. Don't worry about those other gurus yet. You just worry about Prabhupada now. The other gurus you will meet gradually, and you'll hear from them. And that guru who inspires you most in Prabhupada consciousness, then that's your guru. You say, how do I know who my guru is? Find the one that inspires you in your relationship with Prabhupada, and the one you feel represents his mood, his teachings. You understand his teachings better by hearing from this guru. Then, yeah, that's your guru. So if we do that, I think automatically Prabhupada consciousness is it'll be there. And so, as I said, the answer to your question is you have to be Prabhupada conscious. Then everyone will be Prabhupada conscious, right? But it's a beautiful thought. We have Prabhupada. We have the general. That's why we want to bring everyone to ISKCON, because we have him. And you may know people who go outside of ISKCON and they learn Krishna consciousness, and some are doing well, some are not doing so well. But there's certain things they don't learn that Prabhupada taught, a certain mood they don't have. And I just feel like it's a bit unfortunate if they don't get that mood. They may get it outside. They may get most of it. Some of it they may not get. But if there's anything that they're not getting of Prabhupada's mood, and it's just unfortunate. And a lot of them they don't get it because it's not emphasized. It's not Prabhupada's movement, so it's not emphasized. So what do we do now? Were you planning to go longer, or I went overtime?
No, we're good, Prabhu. It's a holiday, so definitely. If anybody have any other questions or comments, feel free. Unless you're in a hurry, Prabhu.
Mother's Day.
Yeah, Mother's Day.
First guru.
Okay. Maybe that's it, Prabhu. Thank you so much, for a very unique way of engaging every one of them to think. Usually the class is okay, somebody's speaking, we try to get in things, but you're provoking us to keep thinking and come up with ideas. Very wonderful.
Yeah, it's an important topic. It's been talked about a lot, but once Prabhupada's in your heart, then it's just going to happen, right?
Yes.
Okay, Prabhupada is
so
alive. He's your Param Guru. You have a connection. He's alive, and cultivate that connection, and help other people cultivate that connection. And that's the real ace in the hole, so to speak, for ISKCON, is that we have Prabhupada. And so you can say, quote unquote, exploit that, get him in front of everybody, and especially for Indians, it's very easy. They'll understand his English mostly right from the start. They'll understand his philosophy. They'll see how he's different, And you have people like Jaggi Vasudev Sadguru, and he's very outspoken, very much in the media, but let people hear Prabhupada. They'll see that it's a different kind of sadhu, different kind of sadguru, and certain people will be attracted to that. They'll see the difference. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Orlando. Yatra.
Happy Mother's Day to all wonderful mothers on the call.
Yes.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
And I pray you have no more mothers in the future. Only Radharani.
Thank you.
Haribol. Jai Prabhupada.